Hey, welcome guys. Today's video, we're going to start off by showing my Anycubic Photon M3 going hard at work here. You might not be able to tell, but this is the Sulaco from the Aliens movie, or at least part of it. Probably the midsection, the front section, and I think there's some guns and some connecting points. I don't know if you can see that very well, but it's still it's been printing for about 4 hours now. It still has about 2¼ hours left to print, and but it's looking good. The one part I was concerned about was the little top part that comes out the very front. I don't know if you can see that. Let me see if I can move this over a little bit and zoom in here. Right in here where this front part comes, this kind of raised part, I had to run some supports all the way down. So that's printed out, and so that was the only thing that was kind of hanging out as an island, is what they call it, that I had to support. So it's looking good. I still need to print out the back section, and I think there's another section that goes in there, and we'll get to that. So today I'm just going to be printing that out, putting it together, and paint it. Obviously we're not going to light it. It's a solid print there, so there's no room to light it, and it's really kind of small for that scale. When it finishes, we'll see how long, but I'm guessing this will be about 12 inches long or so, time we get everything together. So let's just get this all printed out, and we'll start going from there. All right, here you can see all my parts have been printed out. I've cleaned them, and basically ready for assembly. Again, this file was on Thingiverse. The designer was someone called Mitch Roby, M-I-C-H-R-O-B-I. It was very well designed. I'm going to show you a few of the parts of the design. Now, included in the print are these little connecting pegs, and he attached or placed holes in the different parts so it would line up correctly. You can see where I've installed the pegs into this one section of the body here. Obviously this will go into this front section. Now I did have to sand them down a little bit because they printed straight on the build plate. You often get a little lip where it connects to the build plate, and so I had to kind of sand it away, and just a little bit, nothing major, but that will align your parts. And so when I go to glue them together, I don't have to worry about it sliding out of position. So very nice detail. We had these sections here. You can actually see this was a separate part where I've connected the pegs, and this part kind of nicely goes in here. Again, I had to do just a tiny bit of sanding, but you can see how nicely that fits together. Probably will not have to even, on this one, that seam line virtually disappears, which is really nice. I had a few minor little flaws. I think some of the detail right here was peeling away where the layer just didn't set, and I just sanded it away. I don't think it'll be too noticeable, but basically we'll have these sections, and I believe this connects to here, and then of course the drive section. So it's looking, let's see, it's so it's about a little over a foot long, 13 inches long. We have some guns here, this little bottom section that connects. Very nicely detailed. You can see the panel lines in there. Just trying to be real careful not to mess up any of these, whatever these are, these protruding parts from the front of the ship. I printed out nicely, so I'm just trying to be careful handling that. Now I'm just going to display it on one of these polar light display domes. Now I did take some flat black to make that not look so plastic-like, like that. And so I need to drill a hole. Need to try to figure out kind of the mid part of this so it'll be balanced somewhat. Probably you have a connecting part there, so probably this is pretty much solid resin. I didn't hollow it out any. So I need to drill out a hole for our connecting pole right here so I'll be able to stand up. So I'm going to drill that out before I connect anything else, make sure that fits on properly. That looks like a nice flat spot. And I think that's where the gun goes. I think this is where this lower section connects. So first things first, drill the hole, and then I'll be gluing it together. All right, I'm in the process of joining our parts together. I'm just using some super glue. This is some rubberized super glue. It's a little bit more flexible and a little slower to dry. But I also have some of this Instaset for when I do want it to dry quickly. Joining like this section to the drive section here, yeah, there's a pretty big seam that I'm working on. And just trying to fill it in with the super glue and sand it to make it look less like a seam line and more like a panel line. So I think before I join this to the rest of the body, I'm going to prime this and see how this seam line is turning out. It'll give me a little bit better idea of what I'm looking at, and go from there, because I want to work on this. It's easier to work on this section before I connect it to this. And excuse me. And this part came together really well. I don't think I have to worry much that this is like a natural panel line right here. So I don't think, maybe a little bit of sanding, but that's about it. So otherwise it's looking pretty good. But before I go any further, I'm going to go ahead and slap a coat of primer on this and try to work on addressing the seam line. All right, I have our Sulaco all put together. I tried to do some work on that seam. I think I got it mostly covered in. I try to make it mostly like a panel line rather than a seam line. There is some sanding to do on the little connecting points. Some of them are pretty tight fit, and to get it to fit right, I had to do a little bit of sanding on that. But I think I'm ready to put on a primer coat. I think I'm going to do a black primer coat, and that way we'll get some artificial shading in there. It looks like I have a little curling of, or this antenna array. I might have to heat that up and see if I can bend that back into shape without breaking it, because right now it's curling off a little bit. So other than that, I think everything's looking pretty good. So I'm going to see if I can swing that whatever it is, array that's coming out forward, and then I'll put on a black base coat or primer coat. All right, here's just a quick look. I've applied a black coat. This isn't a base coat, obviously. It's just kind of a primer coat, if you will. And everything's starting to look pretty good. All my parts are there. Still having a little bit of trouble with this one array wanting to bend in a little bit. So I'm trying to just kind of warp it back into shape. So next I'm going to be applying a base coat. Still haven't quite decided what color. I do have some things I'm going to think about trying. I'll talk more about that after a while, but I got to move on to applying some kind of base coat color. Thinking like a gray with a slight blue kind of hue to it. And so when we do the more detailing, I want it lighter to really bring out all the panel lines and the detail of the ship. Okay, well here is the base coat on, and that's just some like medium gray with just a few drops of like a really bright light blue, and went on pretty nicely. And then also I put on just a clear matte coat to kind of protect the paint, and pretty happy with the color. Now I've printed out some decals. You need a laser jet printer and some decal paper, and then you once you print it out, you put some clear coat acrylic finish on it, several layers. Anyway, I found these kind of Aztec spaceship patterns on the internet and just copied a bunch of them. I first tried like putting like whole sections onto the ship, and it just wasn't looking good. And so what I think I'm going to do is try to cut out very small sections and just kind of strategically put it all throughout and see if that works. I don't know if it'll work or how it'll look. If it doesn't look good, obviously I'll take it off and we'll go a different direction. But I'd like to have some just like some panel accents on there, and I thought I'd give that a try. I also printed out some of the Sulaco names. Just found that again on the internet, copied it, and then printed it on there. So I'm going to give that a shot, and we'll see how that turns out. All right, as you can see here, I have a base coat on. It's kind of a gray with just a tint of blue. I actually think it's come off a little bluer on the screen than it is in person. As you can see, I've did some masking off with some tape here just to simulate some panel work. I'll be probably just a grayer, a little bit darker grayer color, spray over, and that'll give us a little bit more detail and interest to our ship here. So I'm just going to figure out what color I'm going to put on, and we'll come back and start peeling those masks off. All right, well, I removed all of my masking tape after putting this gray coat on, and a couple of issues that have popped up, and we're just going to take a closer look. Now, I masked it, and I was trying something where you put a clear coat over the masking to help kind of seal around it to keep the paint from bleeding underneath the tape. And I did that, but I used like a spray can, which I think was way too thick of a layer to do that. I should have just used the airbrush. I wanted some clean lines, and I got the clean lines, but if we look closely, you can see the tape has left some ridges around here. You can tell, obviously, where that clear coat was. And you can notice where all these little black marks where I went to remove the paint, or remove the tape with my hobby knife, and it just dug up under there. Not sure why that happened. It may be because I put a black base coat. It wasn't really a primer coat, so I don't know if this coat of paint really bonded with it, because it just, no matter how careful I was, I just kind of got scratches all over it. I think all this can be fixed though. The first thing I'm going to do is take some very fine sanding paper, probably 1000 grit sanding paper, and wet sand down all these edges, give it a cleaner look. And even before there's one more coat of paint, I want to do a very light dark gray, very thin down to kind of blend all the paneling and the body together. So I'm going to do that, and we'll see how it looks after that. All right, well, things didn't quite work out the way I had hoped. As you can see, all the paneling work I done is pretty much gone. I did some like dark colors painted over it. This wasn't looking good, and then it got too dark to where I was losing all the contrast, so I ended up just going over with some gray color and just trying to highlight the panels. And at this point, it became more about this kind of salvaging the whole project. So I'm kind of liking the way it looks, even though it's not what I planned. I think with the just using my airbrush to kind of bring out some of the middle of the panels with some gray colors, it brought the definition back into the model. And from here, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear coat it, and then I think I'm going to do like an oil wash to kind of darken in some of the panel lines again. Hopefully I won't make it worse this time. But that's what happens in modeling. Sometimes things just don't turn out the way you envision them to happen, and that's the case on this one. However, I'm pretty happy with how it looks at the moment, and I think we can still salvage this 3D print. All right, well, I took and made a wash out of this oil paint and some Tester's enamel thinner and spread it all over our ship. Let that dry for about an hour, and then took a cloth and wiped off a lot of the excess. If something was really dried on, then I took a Q-tip with a little of this enamel thinner and cleaned it off. So it's looking much better now. It's a little glossy because I put a satin coat on it, and to protect the paint for when I did the oil wash. But it's looking a lot better now. I like how the panels are looking. I think at this point I'm going to probably load up my airbrush again with some more paint and kind of hit again some of these spots just in the very center to give it a little bit more character, a little bit more color modulation going on. But I think it's starting to look good, and we got to put the decals on, hopefully the nameplate decals, and hopefully those will turn out well. Those are decals that I printed out, so we will see how that turns out. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and finish up, and when I come back, we'll look at the finished USS Sulaco. All right, well, here is my finished 3D printed USS Sulaco from the Aliens movie. Despite the setbacks and the failed attempts at different ways of painting our Sulaco, I'm really happy with how it came out. I think if I ever do it again, which I think I might, I wouldn't try to do all the decal work. I would just do all the shading and different things with the airbrush. I think that came out pretty good. I finished up, of course, with that oil wash, cleaning it off. I did do some dry pastels, just kind of darken some of these panel lines, give it a little bit more color to it. And also took my airbrush with some light gray and just kind of hit these center points of these big panels, just to give it some color modulation, give it some visual interest. So overall, I'd say the 3D print is really nice. It's free. It's on Thingiverse. Comes in parts. Only issue I really had was were these two parts. I probably could have did a bit of a better job right here where this seam line is. It's a little rough. You can tell that it's been joined together. Other than that, the other parts connected very nicely. Even it's hard to tell this one where this part comes together and this round part, it kind of splits. Kind of a weird place to separate that. I don't know why they didn't just try to make this whole piece one part, then this piece one part. It would have probably been a better seam line to address. But anyway, other than that, this especially this front section I think is very nice, nicely detailed. All these arrays look really nice. I still have a little bit of a bend in this front one. Still trying to work on getting that straightened out. I don't want to put too much pressure on it, but it's not too bad. That's a really nice representation of the ship, and I actually really like the design. So anyway, hope you've enjoyed this video. Until next time, everybody have a good one.